Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to the Roydell Clarke channel. I don't have an introduction yet. Right now we're just producing videos. If you saw my first video, you would see that we're just going to get this ball rolling. This is the first edition. In this video, I actually want to take a moment and tell a story. And what I hope that you get out of this story, especially for athletes, I'd also say especially for young black men as well too. A story of perseverance, but also believing in yourself and realizing the expectation. So it's a short story. I think it's a short story anyway. But I think it's a story worth telling. And I think it's a story that I think people can learn from. So once upon a time, I played basketball. I ended up playing basketball for university. And when I played basketball there, if you don't know what a university basketball schedule looks like, it looks like this. You have your classes, say you have 5 classes per semester. That means you'd have about 3 to 4 classes per day, classes blocks per day. Within those class blocks, obviously you have to make sure you have time to eat. So for example, if you had a Monday, say you have 4 classes within that day. It might be an 8:15, one starts at 10:15, one at 2:15, another one at perhaps a night class at 7, perhaps one at like 3:45, whatever it is. So you have four classes, say on this Monday. Obviously you have to eat lunch. Obviously you have to eat breakfast. Obviously you have to eat a form of dinner, especially if you're a performing athlete. On top of that though, you have practice, right? So you have daily practice sometime in the afternoon after most of your classes. You have individual most of the time if you're at a university that's competitive in the way that they want to get the most out of their athletes. So you'll have an individual. So if you're playing any sport, for example, you might have a session where you have to join with an assistant coach, right? Attend strength training or something like that. And then you'll have your individual things that they would assign to you. Make sure you hit the weight room, follow these workout regimens for the specifics. It might be, for me, it was a specific regimen for the guards, specific regimens for the bigger players, the power forwards, the centers, right? Different sports, I'm sure, follow something very similar. And so I wanted to give that context first. And so where the story really begins is just someone who understands that when it comes to sports, if you get there early and you leave there late, understanding all the things that come in between. Obviously you want a social life and you need time to sleep and all that, but if you are a student or you are an athlete that's the first one there and you're an athlete that's the last one to leave, that's an example coaches, mentors, people in positions, managers will want to make an example out of and say, hey, look, let's shine a light over here on Bobby. Let's shine a light over here on Sarah. Bobby and Sarah, look at, this is what they do. They come in, they do their work, they stay longer, they get their stuff done, they're willing to help people out. We want to exemplify this. We want to champion this sort of behavior within our culture, whatever that culture may be, whether it's sports, it's the business world, what have you. So, what's the story? The story is at some point in time, I stopped playing sports. As everyone does, you sort of either age out or you have, things happen, circumstances happen. You just stop doing that sport, especially collegiately. You only have so many years. I didn't use all my collegiate years, but that's usually how it happens. So when I stopped, I wanted to stop partly because I had so many other interests I wanted to share, right? I had so many things going on in my mind. There's poetry, there's writing I wanted to get into, many different initiatives, the business part. So I got into content creation and design, started designing websites and different sort of like brochures, different stuff like that for businesses. I really wanted to pursue these other things that I've been wanting to do. And if you are an athlete or have been an athlete, you'd understand that there really isn't much room to develop those things. I was also, anyway, I think you understand that point. So when I had left sports and I started to doing these business sort of venture, the writing, the more creative endeavors, there's somebody who I knew from the time of when I was playing. And one of the reasons why they reached out, they obviously wanted to know, why I ended up taking this detour. And so that was part of the conversation. The other part of it was, what is it I'm doing now? And so I explained those things. And after a couple of years, they had seen it. And one of the things they had told me was, you have to, it's great what it is that you're doing. And I see the passion that you're doing it, but you're also so young. Just take some time and relax. You don't have to go so hard with this, right? You don't have to kill yourself. Stop and smell the flowers, sort of deal, right? And they meant well. I do not want to give off the impression that there was anything ill will behind it. This is something that I had the laser focus for. This is something I was really, giving my all to. And so in hearing that, it was received as such. One of the things that I would recommend to you guys, to anyone, that I learned myself is anytime you feel off, disrespected, insulted, or just any sort of dissonance that you feel in you when you're having these conversations, take a step back in your mind and just ask yourself this. Do I think their intentions are pure? Do I think they have good intentions? Is another way to say that. And if you do, then just dismiss it. If the words come out a certain way, you didn't like certain words, just say, I think they had good intentions. That's good enough. Let's move forward. And this person did have good intentions. But in this specific moment, I felt there was something I wanted to address here. And again, it's something that was kind of reoccurring that I was hearing, not so much just from that person, but sort of around. Many different people have kind of mentioned this. And I wanted to make this point clear. And I said, many people have been saying this to me in so many words. But I want to say this. If I was an athlete, as I mentioned before, and I was the first person to walk into the gym and the last one to leave, and I was doing this in every waking second, people would look at me as an example to point to. And all of a sudden, when it comes to the business part of it, when it comes to the creative part of it, and I'm putting time and effort, and again, progress, guys, is invisible until it's not. Progress is invisible until it's not. Something my dad said when I was younger. He said, make sure you pat yourself on your back. And he'd make us do this, physically do this. And I'm like, okay, Dad, yeah. And I just do this. But I understood it now. I understood it then. I understood it now. And I think it's something that you guys should also think about. See if this is something that you can incorporate for you. Not everyone's going to be around. He's not always going to be around to pat me on the back. Nobody is. So you have to do it for yourself because you know the work that you've put in. And outwards looking in, they may not see what it is that you see. They may not be able to see a fancy house or a fancy car and be able to point to it and say, hey, look, this guy's successful. But you know the work that you've done. So you need to be the one to give yourself that reassurance, that congratulations when nobody else is around. And so I'd put in a lot of work at this time. However, outwardly, it's not something that objectively somebody will be able to look and say, hey, look at all the work that you've done. But in sports, they see you in the gym. They see your shots going in. They see your playing time. They see there's an objective measurement that you'd be able to see and quantify and qualify. And so I wanted to make clear in that moment that if I was playing sports and you'd be looking at me and say, you know what a great job, regardless of how young it is I was. If I was 7 years old, if I was 10, 15, 20, I would believe in this specific conversation. And I think generally it applies to as an athlete, as a black athlete as well. I would say that factors. I am in my lane, doing what it is I'm supposed to do and doing it well and not taking things for granted. And I think that would be champion. However, as I transition out into this other department of things, into the creative business side of it, I was met with this sort of sentiment. And I rejected it. I rejected it entirely. I said, you know what? I do not care for this. I reject it because you would champion it. Yet what I'm getting here as I'm doing this creative business stuff is, hey man, just stop, smell the flowers. You have time, you have this and that. It's not something that people were no longer pointing to and saying, hey, look at what he's doing. Look at the work ethic that he's putting in. Granted, a lot of it they can't see, but for what they were seeing enough of the work to be able to comment on it, to say, hey, slow down and maybe, breathe a little bit, maybe go out and so forth. But if I was playing sports, I wouldn't have heard that. Now I've entered this space. And so I'm telling you this story, and this is one of the stories that hit well for me because, and there's a second part to it, but I'm telling you this story because whatever it is that people feel you're supposed to be doing, or you feel that you're supposed to be doing, people will support that. If you're in those lanes, whatever it is for you, it could be sports, it could be academics, it could be swimming, it could be piano lessons, whatever it is for you that people feel is your lane, anything that you're doing, could be work as well too. If you're working in extra hours and your manager is pointing towards you for that, but you want to switch gears and develop yourself in a different category, a lot of people will meet you with resistance, and that same skill and vigor and life that you brought to the one thing, they may not be so excited for you to bring to another thing. So it's upon you. It is apparent to me that you, in that moment, should pat yourself on the back for making that transition and realize this is something that's also going to come, right? If you're in an area where other people can't see it so clearly as they saw it in another area, but also depending on how they perceive you, if you're stepping out of a certain element or box, you're going to have that sort of saying. So I want you to pat yourself on the back. I'm virtually patting you on the back as well too for even taking that stride or wanting to take that stride. And hopefully if this video was able to help you do that, I definitely, that'd actually make me very happy if I was able to do that. I think that's a simple way to say it. Now, what I will say, this is something that was a conversation that happened, I'd say about 7 years ago. 7 years ago. And what I've realized with time is part of also what they were trying to communicate to me at that time is that things will take longer than you expected, especially when you're, just graduated high school, early 20s. You have this sense of time that is still distorted. That you're going to graduate high school, get your degree, 2 degrees, find your girlfriend or your wife, get married, white picket fence, 26, things are going to be cool, right? You have no real sense of the global dynamics, so many different things that you can't really factor for in your early 20s, in your late teens, early 20s, that you really have to experience. And things that you think would take, 2 years, 4 years, really takes 6 years to do. Now, with AI and a lot of the tools that we have now, we can definitely compress that. But there's a time component and we can't skip time. You can't skip time on certain things and you just have to go through it. And I think that's kind of what it is that they were communicating to me, is that the life and vigor was cool. It was needed, but you're ahead of the pack in a lot of different ways. You have time. Don't put that additional burden on yourself to get this done within a certain time period. I think I've come to appreciate that portion of it, that I wasn't able to get. And again, this is a great lesson to show you that there's only so much that you could really grasp at a certain age just because of the time component. And this is where they separate wisdom with intelligence, right? They say, you know, what's the, anyway, I can't remember it. Tomato. Yeah, tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing. Intelligence is knowing. Tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put tomatoes in your fruit salad, right? And I think I've gained the wisdom on that point to realize that life's a journey. And again, we know this, we've heard these terms, right? But to really internalize it, it takes time. And that's something that I've learned myself. That's something I've learned in more recent years. But yeah, so I think the moral of the story is, the moral of this story that I want to share with you is the way you do anything is the way you do everything, or it should be. If you are serious about school or business or work, those are transferable to the things that you are also passionate about that you may not have pursued or really focus your attention on. And, you know, you could have a lot of your life together, but if you have a certain passion or certain itch for something that you haven't developed, you can have 100% of 80. You know, you could have the house, have the car, have this, but if you are not, actually, I'll say that for another video. I don't want to go too far off. The moral of the story here is that when you're doing something that other people feel is your lane, when you're doing that and you're doing it well, people will champion it. No matter how many hours, no matter what it is that you do, people will galvanize around that if you're doing what they believe in their mind is the right path. However, there's things that are you're not a projection of what other people think. You are your own individual, and with that comes your own quirks, your own interests that other people might not be interested in nor spend time, and it may be hard for them to make sense of that. It is your job. It is an incumbent upon you to still pursue those things and develop those things, even just for your own satisfaction, regardless of if it's something that will affect your bottom line. And in doing so, you'll be a much happier individual. People around you would be much happier. But in also doing so, you'll be met with resistance. And that resistance that you get, just remind yourselves to pat yourself on your back for the work that you are doing. And realize that this is your path and your journey. And it's things that will benefit you and the people around you, regardless of if they think that it will or not. Things work out in mysterious ways. That's what they say. But things come back full circle. I've lived long enough life now to realize things you do 7 years ago strangely comes back. And I'm starting to see dividends of things that I did 5, 6, 7 years ago just now, right? And I'm seeing this pattern. So pursue the things that you want to pursue. Take interest in those. Don't let anyone tell you not to do those things. And make sure to pat yourself on the back. And what I mean by that is go buy, even if you have, say, $10 in your account, go buy that caramel sundae at McDonald's for $3. Go there, go sit down, eat it yourself, and tell yourself, you know what? I put a lot of work into this. I've learned a lot. Nobody else might be able to quantify it, but you know what it is. Give yourself that pat on the back. That's what that means. And just understand that some of the information, some of the things you may get from people, always ask, what are their intentions? Do I feel their intentions are good? And I believe his intentions in this conversations were good. And with time, I was able to make more sense of it. And yeah, so that's the story for today. If you stuck around, I appreciate you doing so. I am looking to just get a lot of this stuff out as possible. I do have a website, roydellclarke.com, that I'm currently working on. Taking a little bit of break from that to just get some of this stuff out there. But what I will do in future videos with my content is for every video that I have, there will be an accompanying blog article. So if I'm speaking about this, I might have 3 or 4 points or breakdown of it, that will also be available in the website. You'll be able to find that in the comments. So I want to leave it there. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Roydell, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.